The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Time to attack. Let's play hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. Let me start tonight with this. I think it's time for the president to stick it to his enemies. Forget this losing inch by inch and playing defense and win this thing on offense. Let me start by saying out loud who his enemies are. They are not those who push the racist argument that he's a Kenyan, an East African who conned his way into the American presidency. Their argument that says Barack Obama should have been deported as a criminal, not elected and re-elected president of the United States. No, his true enemies are the backers and kissing cousins of the birthers. The people like John Boehner who refuses to stand up to them, who makes common cause with the haters even as he positions himself as not quite one of them, who keep their hands clean even as they benefit from the garbage their birther buddies are throwing out at the latest right-wing feeding time at the zoo. Obama's true enemies are those who back the 36 states now pushing voter suppression laws to make damn sure the country doesn't go and elect another black president or a progressive white president. You know, this generation's equivalent of poll taxes and those discredited literacy tests, anything to keep minorities from their voting rights. And to this crowd, the Obama haters, add to them those who gnaw on the president's health care bill with the hunger of starving rats, but offer nothing in its place except their crazed notions about bringing down the government and destroying the country's economic stature, even as they deny even a penny of credit to the president for the zooming American stock market right now. These are the enemies, those who stand and benefit from all the anger, hatred, and indecency of the nasty right, while claiming to be above them when in fact they are below them, for again and again humming along when the worst of them, the true haters of the right, sing their racist and un-American songs. Ed Rendell was governor of Pennsylvania. David Corn is Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones Magazine. Both are MSNBC political analysts. I want to talk with the governor. Governor, I think this president has made a big mistake. First of all, in naming his health care bill Obamacare, which has been used as a term of personal derision, especially by those who hate him personally and use anything about his person to discredit anything attached to him. And then I go on, but I think what's going on here is the right wing of this country has been a big part of the Republican coalition, and not once does Boehner or McConnell ever stood up and said those people are unacceptable in the way that Bill Buckley in the 1950s said anti-Semitism is not allowed in the American conservative coalition. Nobody says it. Nobody stands up from the middle right and says, we ain't part of your crowd, you're not part of ours. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree, Chris, and I think it's time for the president to go on the offensive. I wouldn't bother with the birther issue because every time some Republican running for office says that the president wasn't born in the United States, all that does is get another independent voter or another moderate Republican to shake their head and say, I can't be with these wackos. So I think that's an issue that
why does Boehner and McConnell never say a word against them? Why do the people who run for office on the Republican side never separate themselves from them? Because they get their votes. That's why.
Absolutely, they get their votes. But the birthers are out there, and every time a birther's out there, it helps our cause. It helps us for 2014. What I do think is the president should go on the offensive on voting rights. He should go on the offensive. Make them vote on an immigration bill, because that's a bill that really will resonate. If they vote that down, they're losing Hispanic voters, and I don't care who their candidates are.
But don't they worry about...
Make them vote on a jobs bill.
Well, I hope you agree with my point. The reason they don't want to do that, it forces them to choose between the haters out there who don't want immigrants and what the president's pushing. Yeah.
But make them vote on that. You know, they're attacking the Affordable Health Care Act, and you're right, by the way. The Affordable Health Care Act polls a lot better when it's called the Affordable Health Care Act than when it's called Obamacare. But make them vote on a jobs bill and draw the distinction. 41 times the Republicans in the House have wasted the nation's time voting to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act, but they haven't passed a jobs bill. Send them another jobs bill. Keep sending them jobs bills and make them vote on a jobs bill. And I think that's the strategy.
I agree with that. I've been pushing that
Talk
too.
about
that's your line of
right. Talk about
yeah. Anyway, what I want to do is just change the conversation, because we're not going to get a report card on Obamacare, on health care, through November 30th or March. It's just going to be an endless woodpecker thing in the president's head. Anyway, the governor then mentioned voting rights. I think President Obama has sort of a gopher pitch coming out of here. Take the fight to Republicans on the issue of voter suppression. Make the party choose between honor or Reince Priebus? Take a look at this map. Under the leadership of RNC Chair Reince Priebus, Republicans in more than 35 states have advanced legislation in an effort to suppress the voting rights of African Americans and other minorities. Every single one of those bills were introduced by Republicans. That's according to the Advancement Project, an organization which tracks voting rights. There's so much ripe fruit out there to stick it to them on. Their attitudes about the birthers, I disagree with the government. I think they get away with it. They get all those crazy right-wing voters, especially in the South, and they don't then cost them a nickel. You know what? They won't challenge him. Who the hell is Boehner to say? What does Boehner say? Let's take a look at what Boehner said about the birthers, because I think he's vulnerable as hell on this.
As the Speaker of the House, as a leader, do you not think it's your responsibility to stand up to that kind of ignorance?
David, it's not my job to tell the American people what to think. Our job in Washington is to listen to the American people.
That's a leader.
No,
he's Speaker of the House. It's not our job to tell the American people what to think. On war, we got to go to war. They're quite willing to tell us when to go to war. On anything they talk about, they tell us to vote for them. And now they say, I can't tell you whether the guy's a Kenyan or not.
There are a couple of things the president needs to do. I think you're right in terms of, and the governor is right too, that he needs to find new lines of attack. I don't think much will be heard until at least the website's working. I think the first three things to do for the next month. I'm sorry you want to hear this, Chris.
I just don't think it's worthy of conversation until we get this thing done.
But nevertheless, I do think that ultimately, going into 2014, he will be judged how effective Obamacare is, and they have to get moving in that real fast, because if he talks about all his other wonderful ideas, it's too easy to say, but look at the website. So that has to happen. The other thing is that you didn't mention is that we've been talking about the birther thing for 4 years now. I think in addition to that, he has to come out and say, listen, America thinks that Washington is dysfunctional. Ted Cruz can go on Jay Leno last Friday night and get laughs and applause for talking about how Washington is dysfunctional.
Yeah, but his father's running around calling the guy Kenyan.
I know.
By the way, you let these free shots go by.
No, but let me finish.
Crazy.
I think the president has to get out there and say, Washington's not dysfunctional. It's the Republican Party. There is a difference. You have to pay attention to what's going on here, because the Republicans benefit if everybody thinks Washington is just a mess. And he has to find a way to transcend that, and whether it's making the website work and presenting a good agenda.
Let me just make my case. You guys don't have to agree with me. I look at the free ride the media has been giving the Republican Party. They get these birthers are treated as just Southern, usually out-of-it people. Gomer, he's just a joke. He doesn't matter. And yet the right wing of the party, a quarter of them, a third of them, haters of Obama because of his background. Right. Haters. They're eating it up and voting for it. It works for them. This decision to use 3 dozen states to go out there, including Pennsylvania, to make sure blacks can't vote and they have more whites voting and more concerned older white voting. That's systematic. On health care, instead of playing frickin' defense, how would you go after the Republicans who have 40 million people they want to commit to the emergency room? They don't want to lift a finger for them, and the so-called independent media out there never brings it up. They have discussion after discussion of Obamacare. They're scoring one half of the game. The other half of the game, when the Republicans come to bat, they don't even swing. They don't even have an at bat.
No, they are
isn't that worthy of comment?
Yes, they are.
You never hear it on the news.
They're overly focused on the website and what's happening with the cancellation.
You're doing it again.
No.
There isn't any Republican website.
No. Listen, they're not. The media is not focusing on the hundreds of millions of Americans who are benefiting. But the White House too has not been able to make this great case.
Let me go back to I'm going to try Governor. Maybe it's hard for the news to cover something that doesn't exist. How do you cover day after day the fact that Republicans don't have a health care plan? They've never had one. You have to go back to Nixon, who wanted to have an employer mandate, and that never happened. I don't know how you cover something, but if you're going to cover a competition over who's doing the best job on health care, how do you ignore the fact that one team doesn't even do anything, or even hope to do, or promise to do anything?
I think that's a great point, Chris, and I think it's up to elected official Democrats, mayors, governors, who do have some credibility in their homes to say, come on, guys, you're attacking the president. What's your health care plan? You don't have a health care plan, so let's try to make this baby work, because it's all we got. And I think the president can't do that himself. I think it's time for Democrats, and particularly local Democrats. People listen to mayors. You know that, Chris. They listen to mayors. Where are the Democratic mayors saying, look, the Republicans haven't offered you anything to solve a health care system that's terribly broken. We need a plan, and the Republicans have offered nothing. We need to come to the president's aid.
I was down in Atlanta. Governor, I want you to start on this, because you know this better than anybody here. You're an elected official, very successful politician. Why doesn't the president have a phalanx a tongue, if you will, a gang, a street corner named gang. Just call it a gang because that's what it is in political terms. 20 or 30 men and women around the country, governors, senators, members of Congress, prominent members of Congress, who on a regular basis go out and attack the opponents, the Republicans, for doing nothing and playing racial politics in every other game they play, whether it's voter suppressors, to playing ball with the birthers, or it's having no health care plan, or using government tactics like shutting down the government or risking default on the national debt. Why isn't there a Greek chorus out there constantly pounding them? I don't hear a single. Is this his fault? He doesn't recruit. He doesn't hang out. He doesn't have friends. Why aren't there people out there saying what he ought to be saying? I think
there are people who would be willing to do it, but they aren't being recruited. I'll give you a perfect example, Chris. The day that Bill Clinton was impeached, that Saturday, the Democratic National Committee organized every single city, the mayors, if we had a governor, all of the state senators. In Philadelphia, we had about 80 public officials standing behind me, and we decried the impeachment as purely political, a waste of time, not what the American people wanted in government. And that happened in every major market across the country. Why aren't we doing stuff like that today? I don't know if David has the answer, because it's strange.
He has no friends. I mean, active friends. How many people, look, we know who go on television does well. Schumer's dynamite on television. Boxer's dynamite on television. Durbin's a little milder, but he's good on television. Well, they've got a lot of people who know how to make a point. I mean, they're not doing it.
I think they're getting out there, but I don't think they're
They
getting
are?
They are. You see them on the show. You see them in different. You see Harry.
I hear silence.
But at the same time,
they wimpily come out and we're working on health care. We're trying.
By and large, I don't think the White House has fully join the battle for the political cultural battle with the Republicans. I think the president has been reluctant to do that because he sees himself as president of all America. He doesn't like coming across as the angry guy. He wants to try to make deals. He wants to appeal to people. He did it a few times during the shutdown. You remember that. It seemed pretty effective. But when the shutdown's over, he goes back to a more reasonable position. But this is time to get beyond that.
Governor, congratulations. Eagles won last night, beat Green Bay. Reminded me of back when Ben Brocklin beat them years ago. 100 years ago. Let me ask you this. Do you notice that the president's party, your party, tends to, what do they do in football when they're ahead in points? They just want to kill the clock, so they just fall down with the ball to make sure nobody fumbles. So why does Obama's team do that now? Does somebody not tell them they're not ahead? They're not winning this game. It's not time to bury the ball. Why do they do it?
Yeah. I think the political acumen in the White House right now is lacking. There are people, David, who are willing to speak out, and it shouldn't be the president himself. He shouldn't be the angry man. It should be Democrats, mayors, and governors to stand up and say, come on, guys. He's trying to change the health care system for the better, and nobody has put a decent plan on the table. So let's get behind the president and fix an American problem. We've got to do that all across the country, city after city. It can't be the president himself. This is the time. Chris used the word phalanx. He needs a phalanx of supporters.
I hope they're watching. Thanks so much, Governor Rendell, and thank you, Dave.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.